Not quite 1/4, and never just half, but the entirety of one primate, whole. It is the part of a story, an idea that means more to you than me. Hello and welcome to Full Gorilla Life. We are Jeremy Keene,
Larry Medina,
and Corey Hewlings.
Each week, we will break down an important life concept or talk with an inspiring person so that you can live your full gorilla life.
All right, we'd like to welcome you back onto our podcast. Earlier this week, we went ahead and we put a post out. Obviously, it is October. It is Cancer Awareness Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so we would like to help to bring some awareness to that cause. And so we went ahead, we put out a post this week on if there's any cancer survivors out there that would be willing to share the story. And so through that, we actually have some friends, and serendipitously, they saw the post, and I actually found a friend that is willing to share her story. So I'd like to welcome Jeannie onto our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. It was such short notice. We literally just got, this happened Wednesday. We're here on a Friday. And so we'd like to definitely get into your story. But before we get into that story, we like to get into some quick rapid fire questions.
Just the gorilla gauntlet to get to know you a little bit, Jeannie. Are you married or single?
Married.
Any children?
Yes.
How many?
2.
What city do you live in?
Vero Beach, Florida.
Are you an iPhone or Android person?
Total iPhone.
Favorite movie or book?
Book, Charlotte's Web. That's what I remember as a kid, but many a Joyce Meyer book. What'd you say, movie?
Yeah, a movie or book.
Gone with the Wind.
Okay. Favorite genre of music? Genre of music?
Yeah, like what type of music?
Country, rock?
Country.
Country, okay.
Reservation or just walk in?
Reservation.
Okay. See, this is the one time Keen's not here.
Favorite type of food?
Like soul food, southern food.
Okay. What type of vehicle do you drive?
A Buick Enclave.
And are you beer, whiskey, wine?
Or none?
Whiskey.
Whiskey.
All
What
right.
type of whiskey?
I like vodka, and I like Fireball and
Okay.
Okay.
strong stuff.
Yeah. Fireball's always good, right? Just on ice it's good by itself. I'm with you.
I've seen
Yes.
Larry drink a cup of it before.
Yeah. It was a good time.
Well, I just saw a new recipe called Fiery Eyeballs, like
Oh.
for the season.
Okay.
And it's champagne, Fireball, and some other apple cider.
Okay.
All right. Stay tuned next Friday night.
Yeah, actually, because so we just started this whole other thing with called Friday Night,
Full Gorilla Friday nights.
Full Gorilla Friday Nights. And basically what we're doing is we are doing a mixology. So we are all kind of creating our own drink or following a recipe. So the first one should be released tonight through our social media, right? Facebook. And the one that I went with is called 99 Bananas. I'm sorry, Gone Bananas. And because of Full Gorilla, right? So I figured we'd stay with that.
We'd start with that.
We'll start with that. And Corey,
I did a smoothie. I'm not a drinker, so mine will be a non-alcoholic drink.
always.
So I did some type of banana smoothie concoction. It was okay.
Mine was pretty good.
It wasn't as bad as the kombucha.
No. but basically mine was it was banana rum with white rum, strawberry syrup, and I want to say just bubbly. I substituted bubbly, but it's supposed to be sparkling water. And Keen did a Gourds Gone Wild, which is a beer, but then you put Fireball into that beer, and it's good.
Interesting.
It's delicious.
So
It is
maybe,
delicious.
or definitely next Friday night, we'll have to try. What's it called?
Fiery Eyeballs.
Fiery
Eyeballs.
eyeballs.
It's a pub. It's a recipe from a store.
Okay.
All right.
So you will see us mix that next Friday night.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Probably not very well.
Yeah, I haven't.
You
I
can
don't even
watch
know.
next Friday night, and we'll let you know how horrible or good it is.
Yes, exactly.
And take none of it to heart
It's
because
cute.
we'll probably do it wrong.
Awesome. Yeah. So, all right. So, getting on to the task at hand, right? So, maybe if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of background, right? So, so currently, you are cancer
Mhm.
free,
Currently, I am in remission,
remission.
and I am cancer free as far as all scans. There's no evidence of cancer. Um, that's when you are diagnosed with cancer. That's what you're told when scans are clear. Is there's no evidence of cancer. I always say the journey's really never over. It's more of a day to day, really like any other condition or any illness that one might have. It takes management and a lot of prayer, but I am stage 3B. There's all these stages of cancer. I don't focus on the stage. When I was first diagnosed, I was a 1A, which is a really good place to be. But now I'm 3B, but that's only because I had it progress into my lymph nodes years ago. So, but otherwise, there is no evidence of cancer in my body from
What's the B?
tiptoe to
Does it B mean remission?
the B. No, it's just a later stage. You have A and B.
Okay.
So you can have 3A, 3B, and 3C,
Gotcha.
and I'm 3B.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the numbers mean? So 1 is worse and 3 is better?
1 is better, and 4 is worse and most likely terminal. But there are a lot of survivors that live with 4
Okay.
for many years.
Okay.
It's very individual.
So when you say you're 3B, you were 3B when the cancer was present, or you're still 3B now?
I was 1A when the cancer was present, and then my staging changed when I had it come back, and I came out of remission.
Okay.
And it came back in my lymph nodes, where initially I was lymph node negative.
Okay.
So at that time, which has been 5 years ago, I resumed treatment, but that's the staging
Okay.
that I was at.
Okay.
Because
I gotcha.
once it progresses into the lymph nodes, you go into later stages.
I gotcha.
But all of that's gone, and
So you've been in
That's
remission
awesome.
for 5 years now then?
5 years as
Okay.
of
Oh, wow.
August.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is a long time.
It is.
But that's
7 years initially, 5 years in August. So I just go by the 7 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's been 7 years since you were initially diagnosed
Yes.
with the
Mhm.
1A.
Yes.
So if you don't mind talking through that, so you get told, what are your thoughts?
Well, I get told, and initially I was very scared. At first I was eating lunch at a local restaurant with a friend working. My career, I worked at the Indian River County for 30-something years. And I was there, and just a regular day. I knew, though, initially for a couple days before, I felt like I was going to get a positive call. I just, in my spirit, kept feeling that way. So got the call. I was scared. And I allowed that fear to overtake me for about 3 days until I started really kicking in my faith and praying and realizing that no matter what the diagnosis, no matter how much, I was going to be told, that I just refused to allow every day to be wasted. What you were talking about earlier about, can't wait till Friday. No, I'm going to enjoy the moment and I'm going to enjoy my life, the life that I've been given. And then, spending it with people that you love. So initially I was very scared, but only about 3 days. And then I just felt like I needed to get a plan and go forward, and what would be next. And I had to be positive and be able to go through whatever. I couldn't be, frightened all the time. You can't function. So just kicked my faith in and started praying a lot, and had tons of love and support from my family and friends, and started going there.
So did the doctor call and tell you, or did they tell you to come into the office?
No, the doctor called. He
Okay.
called while I was eating lunch, and basically his first words were, you know, it's a call I'll never forget, because the way he told me, I always think back, you know, at first, why couldn't you have told me differently? But maybe he was being straight up. He just said, I have really bad news for you. Your tumor was positive, and it's really bad. That was his words. So you can imagine, you know, I'm like, really bad. But the way I am a processor, I was like, well, what do you mean by bad? You know, I need to get my own knowledge on this.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's what he had said.
So, I mean, obviously that hits you, I'm sure, like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
Even if you're thinking that it's going to be positive.
It did.
Would you say it was harder to get that news or harder to give that news to your significant other or family?
Harder to give the news to my significant other, to my children.
I could imagine.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah, because I figure, like, I feel like if that happened to me,
Yes.
I would hold it a secret for a little bit, because it would be, I wouldn't want somebody else to freak me out,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
but that's just my take.
It's true. I think everyone's different, and I respect anyone going through anything, you know, as the decisions that they make, you know, are right for them. Although for me, and to this day, it's the same way. I love my children, my grandchildren, my husband, you know, so much. Although I know it's a part of life that, you know, part of life is going to your eternal life.
Yeah.
Right.
But while we're here, you know, that was hard for me, is telling my daughter and my son. Although I think the receiving of the information by my daughter made it easier for me. My son, not as much, because he's more, you know, he was more like, well, you're going to be fine, right? You're going to be fine, right? And I said, well, I'm going to trust God, and I'm going to keep going forth and put every effort I can into this. She was more like, what's next? What do I need to do to help you? You know, kind of thing. And my husband, of course, was very supportive too. But I think they're overwhelmed, their fear, you know, as a mother, I've always felt like I'm the one to protect, you know, my children, and keep them from bad things happening, or, you know, try to shelter in some ways.
Absolutely.
So I think for me, that was very hard. That was hard. The news, scared, and then telling them.
Now, did you tell your husband first and then your children, or all together, or?
I went home. You know, I didn't do it over the phone. I told my husband first, and it was like I went home. I mean, there was, you know, I couldn't even eat anymore. So it was one of those initial things. And then I told my husband, and then I called Amanda, and then I told our son later at dinner.
So what actually? So before you got diagnosed, something got you to the doctor's office.
Well,
can we talk through that?
Yes, and that's really crucial for others. Is doing self-examinations, because I really never did. I knew you were supposed to. I did have mammograms. I was faithful with that for 14 years prior. So in my early mid-30s, like 36 all the way. I was 50 when I was diagnosed. So 36 to 50 every year, faithful, all that. I actually didn't do self-examinations, but I was reaching across, really simple, to get a back scratcher to give my husband, and just had like a scratch myself, and kind of went like this. So when I did, I felt like a small, like pea-sized marble, hard as a rock, on my sidewall. So I found it myself.
Interesting. So then once you found that, then you just went to the doctors and then did a biopsy.
Yes.
Okay.
I called within a couple days, and had another mammogram that was inconclusive, and they couldn't find it. And then had another one, and it was found then, and then the biopsy and the whole chain of events, ultrasound, and that kind
Now, did your obviously, I assume your husband did, but did your children know you were going in for the biopsy and the mammogram when you had initially found it?
Yes.
So you let them know. They knew to expect some type of news, a yes,
Yes.
or no.
Mhm.
Okay.
I definitely told my daughter, and yeah, I told my son too, and my
Okay.
husband. Those three. Not my grandchildren. You know, my children were adult. You know, our adult
Yes.
children, and we're adult children, but not my grandchildren, because we wanted to be sure of what the journey. You know, what was it going to be before anybody got
Absolutely.
upset about
Yes.
anything. But knowing the suspicion was there was enough to just start really praying about everything.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that.
So what did your treatment look like? Did you go through chemo or?
My treatment, initially, I chose to have bilateral mastectomy. So in 2012, in July, when I went to the doctor and everything was, confirmed, I chose to have a bilateral mastectomy. And then after that, when you go through that, you see if they get clear margins, and he did. And then so I started the process of reconstruction, but halted it because when I met with an oncologist and then got a second opinion, I had it was recommended that I have chemotherapy. Of course, you never say never and never swear that you'll never do something, because I had said forever that I would never do chemotherapy. And but that changed because my oncologist was a breast cancer survivor, also 25 years. And, she didn't try to convince me one way or the other. She gave me the facts, and the other doctors gave me the facts. And I went through chemotherapy. And then after that, during that, I had to have this other immunological drug because of the type I have. I have a very aggressive type. It's called HER2 positive. So it's ER/PR positive, HER2 positive. The HER2 positive is what you don't want to be. You want to be HER2 negative if you're in that boat.
So the HER2 positive is a type of cancer?
Yes, it's a type of protein that binds to the tumor that tells it to divide.
Okay.
Basically, in a nutshell. So so the chances of coming back for me, I was told at the time, after I went through all that, I was doing good. Did that, lost my hair, went through the surgeries. I worked through everything full time. I had a great employer and leader at the time, and coworkers who supported me and helped me. And I did everything that I was told to do, by the doctors and everything. One big team. The team is, for me is God, my family, friends, team of doctors. You got to have support. And I started going to a support group too.
Okay.
So you went through the chemo, and then at that point in time, it went away, right?
I was lymph node negative. So they take 1 to 3 lymph nodes when they do a mastectomy or a lumpectomy, or
Any of the
one side or the
ectomies?
other. Yeah, any of the ectomies. There you go. So at that time, after chemo, then I stayed on the drug for the HER2 positive for a little while. Then I went off everything and was on just a tablet for estrogen for, that would be up to 5 years. But while on that medication, 18 months later, through an ultrasound, through a regular routine test, there were a suspicious node that was under my arm, my left arm, which left was the site of my cancer.
Okay.
I should say the cancer, not my. I don't like to claim it too much.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
But so at that time, they did a fluid draw and all that, and what's called a needle core biopsy, and then that was confirmed that yes, the cancer had returned. It's in your lymph nodes. We don't know how invasive. We're going to put a clip on that node. Did that. It's a metal clip they kind of shoot in there, and then I'd need to do a lymphadenectomy. That was in 2014, so that was 18 months later. So in 2014, I had lymphadenectomy, and I think I had 13 lymph nodes removed, and I believe that no, I had 21 removed,
Wow.
and 13 were positive. So there was a lot of cancer, and but nothing else from head to toe, which is, a miracle in itself.
Sure.
And no other, it's not considered metastatic because it's considered local recurrence because it was right here on that side. So from that point, after that, the surgery healed up. I had radiation. And then August or September of 14, I was finished with radiation. And I went, instead of the oral pill, I still to this day, I go every 4 weeks and I have these injections. And then every 3 weeks, I have infusion, an IV infusion. And I've been doing that now for, it's over 5 years now.
Wow.
So it's a constant, like you said, it's a constant battle. It's not just over because it's gone.
Right.
So now,
Still being treated.
yeah, so you're still being treated, but when you were told about the second piece, what was your spirits then? If you don't mind my asking.
No, I don't mind at all. I wasn't scared at all. I had already had enough evidence from my beliefs and my faith in God, and I just felt like I had no longer had fear. I still don't. I don't have fear anymore because I feel sure that this journey is something that it's an opportunity for me. So I know that it's happened for a reason. And I believe that it's because I'm fulfilling my purpose through it. The second time, I wasn't afraid at all. I had no fear. I believed that I would be okay. And if I wasn't, I started to think of things like when you asked about the initial call. There's two things that are critical to me in this journey that I've been shown, and both were early on in the diagnosis and treatment and all. And one is that cancer, no matter what, can not take away my ability to love or to be loved. That's number one. And number two is before I was diagnosed, that day before I got the call, really nothing's changed because I wasn't promised that day and I'm still not.
That's absolutely,
so that's how I feel. And I think that drawing that kind of strength is why I was no longer afraid when I got that second call.
And that's huge, right? Because to your point, so my mom also, I did lose my mom to breast cancer, but this is going on 3 years ago. Before that, she got diagnosed. When she got diagnosed, it was already stage 4. Like it was already pretty bad. And so we didn't know what was going on. She was just in constant pain. And we were like sending her to chiropractors. And they're like, no, like she was just complaining about her back, like something about her back. And I was like, okay, it's just odd. But it would change. It would go from like here, then all of a sudden her leg would hurt. And then it would just, the pain would move constantly. So we're like, we have no idea. So they ended up getting a biopsy. When they did the biopsy, the physician called her into the office and it was just her and him. And he basically told her that she had 6 months left to live, right? At that point in time, she was kind of losing it. And my argument to her, to get her spirits back up, I would always, and not to get her spirits up, but I would always say, like, listen, this doesn't mean anything, what he tells you. Really what you need to focus on is what's next. How can we approach this? What do we need to do, right? Number one. Number two, you may still outlive me because I could be walking down the street and get hit by a car. Like there's no guarantees for me either, right? So it's like, and it's not to say that like my death should bring you better, but my whole concept is what you should always start thinking about is just like, what can I do now to be better and live our full life, which is something me and Corey always talk about, is like, what can we do to have our full life and constantly, because there's no guarantees for tomorrow, regardless of what you do. Right. So, yeah. So, you know, and it's hard news, right? It's definitely hard news to swallow, but I feel like having a good support group is really important.
It is important. And I became part of a support group locally here within 3 days. And, your mother, I think being part of the support group, I've met tons of survivors, all kinds of cancer, breast and, lung, every kind, and in the chair, having an infusion every 3 weeks. But back on your mom, I think, we all handle it differently. And I think you have a knowing, you kind of have a knowing inside. I think for me, when you mentioned, would you even say anything for a few days? Well, I've thought about that. If they told me that I had something again, I almost don't want to even tell anybody. You go through all these phases of this.
Yeah.
But I do believe that no matter what, unless you're just in such an advanced stage that you're, no longer able to function, you still can, try to enjoy what you have left.
Yeah. Now, she was told that she only had 6 months. However, she ended up living for another 3 years. So
that's huge.
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. That's huge because she got to see my son grow a little bit older. Got to see us do certain things, right? So she was still able to be a part of the family and experience things that we went through. So yeah, that's huge. And to me, the way I look at it is like every day that you get is one day closer to possibly that cure for cancer.
Right.
We don't know what's on the horizon. So that's what I would always tell her. If you can last to like next month, who knows what happens next month? We have no clue, right? I mean, there's so many stories out there.
Yes.
Saw a documentary on a news channel called Vice, and there are so many different things where like in immunotherapy, which is something that you talked about earlier, they have certain immunotherapies that they can inject you with a virus that goes in and it actually attacks the cancer cell. So there's so many things out there that we don't know about, right? And that's an old story. That's like from a long time ago. The story that they followed was a child at the Philadelphia Cancer Center, Philadelphia Children's Hospital. And this child had like 2 weeks left. Like she was on her deathbed. And they injected her with an immunotherapy, which is a mutation of the HIV virus. However, it doesn't mean that she has HIV. It's just, just has something in it. They injected her with it. It gave her like a horrible fever that night, like 107 degrees. I think she might have been in a coma for like a week. A week later, though, she woke up. 2 years later, she's no signs of cancer. So it's like, there's so much hope.
The doctor,
There is hope.
yeah, and the doctor can tell you one thing, and that really, I mean, that's based on what they've seen, but they haven't seen everything.
Right.
So, and I think when you get that, to have something to cling to like your faith and your family, it's just got to be huge. Yeah. And like you were saying, whether you don't know whether you'd tell your loved ones right away or not. Me and my wife have had this discussion, and she's afraid that her mother wouldn't tell her if something happened. And that it just destroys her to think that her mother might not tell her or wouldn't tell her right away. So I don't really know, even after the multiple conversations that we've had, where I wind up on that scale, because I don't feel like you can really know till you get there.
Agreed.
I think that's true, and I do know others that haven't told their loved ones. And I think, my thought on that is, I say, well, a third time, if I was told, I wouldn't want to tell them, but I know myself well enough to know that I would.
Yeah.
And
right.
I would, because no, I don't want to hurt them. Yet on the other hand, in a way, I feel like I would be taken away from them. I feel like, yes, initially, or all the way, you would be sad, but it would not be fair to them to not tell them and tell my loved ones, because there may be something they want to do, or if I was in some later advanced stage and we were like, listen, we're not God, we're not going to go by the statistics of a 6 month or 3 month, although I can appreciate doctors in their profession, giving somebody that a lot of times, but yet on the other side, I don't think there should be a number unless somebody asks. You know,
Correct.
if they ask, hey, what do you think? Yet they really can't say for sure.
Yeah.
Although based on their experience and the statistics and their knowledge, obviously they've looked at many cases and they can say, well, it looks like this, you know, whatever. But I think not telling would be, for me and my family and how close we are, it would be an injustice to them, because there may be something they, you know, would want to share or do, or.
And I think that's kind of how I feel like when we left our conversation, because we kind of left it at like, I feel like if I would want to know, then I would have to tell people right away. Like if I would want to know if my significant other or mother or father, as soon as they knew, I'm the type of person, because I'm a very big, like, and you can't always, but I am very big, like, what's next? How can we fix this?
Right.
Like,
and that's where I would definitely tell everybody, but I would have a plan in place. Here's what's, you know, so it would be like immediately I would have to digest the information, figure it out, and then move forward.
yeah, I could see that, because you don't want other people trying to steamroll your narrative of
Exactly.
what's going to happen.
Right.
'Cause if you don't have a plan in place, then you're kind of just, you're going to have people shooting stuff at you all the time. And
Yeah.
I could see where that would get intimidating as well.
Yeah, because there's some really good doctors in town that I feel helped my mom live that much longer. You know, luckily I worked at the hospital, so I had a lot of connections. So I knew all the physicians that I needed to know, and they knew me personally. So as soon as I would ask them, they would jump on it and they would help me out. So, you know, there's some really good physicians in town.
There is.
That can
I
really
mean,
help.
I have nothing but good for all of the physicians that I have, and I'm grateful. You know, and I think when you talk about enjoying life, I'm so deeply grateful for every day. You know, I mean, literally, when I wake up, most days, if you just breathe, you're taking breaths in and your lungs are clear, and, you know, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So I try not
Absolutely.
to allow things to really bother me. I try to let it roll. Most things roll right off.
So now at this point, though, you are a survivor. So you have survived, but you're still involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you still go to support groups, you said?
Yes.
Is that more for you or more for the other people that are going through it right now?
Is for the other people.
Yeah.
I think initially, back 7 years ago when I went out of fear, I didn't know anybody, you know, that was alive that had been through chemotherapy. And I had all these things concocted in my mind, you know, of what somebody, could you even talk? You know, I mean, I remember my thought thinking, can you talk when you go through, or am I going to be able to talk? I mean, I had such lies coming into my head. And so I actually, through my daughter, she knew a girl who is no longer here, Samantha Gaudier, lovely Gaudier. And she had ovarian cancer, and she passed. I think she was 23. But she spoke with me and told me, the very first words when I spoke to this lady was, girl, I say, she could have been my daughter. She said, are you positive? And I said, yes. She goes, okay, well then I'll talk to you and share whatever I need to with you. But you have to stay positive. So she had been through a lot herself. But I did go to a support group. There was a pamphlet in my oncologist's office, Friends After Diagnosis. And I started going, and I met a lot of mostly women, although men get breast cancer too. If we're back on October, you know, I've met 2 men in the 7 years that have had breast cancer. And so we are, I say we because I'm on the board of directors now, and I've helped, you know, volunteered, and I've worked with them and worked for them. And
that's, you're on the board of directors for Friends After Diagnosis?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which is a local, we were breast cancer, and then we merged with the Ovarian Cancer Alliance, Treasure Coast Ovarian Cancer Alliance a few years ago, and did breast and ovarian. And as of the beginning of 19, we changed to all women's cancer.
Okay.
We've grown and multiplied, and I go because I feel like if I am surviving this, treatment or no treatment, then I've got to be able to give back. I've got to be able to give people hope. I see people initially diagnosed. I see people that, you know, pretty close. I've definitely been by the bedside of people in hospice that I really didn't know that well, but they became a friend, although maybe it was for a couple of weeks. And their family asked me to come. And so, you know, I've had to step out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways in these 7 years. But I know that it's all been good in that regard and been a huge opportunity for me. Hope and encouragement.
Yeah. And so how often do you meet, or does a group meet?
Yes, we have meetings the second and fourth Monday of every month locally here. We had we call an angel donor donate and provide us with a space that we're able to lease for 3 years on Aviation Boulevard. So we have our own facility now. We were meeting in churches and at Indian River Medical Hospital in the past and at the Cancer Center and different things. And now we have our own facility. So we have meetings on Saturdays. We have one at Sebastian River Medical Center on Saturdays once a month, and we have a schedule on our website. It's I say we because I feel such a part of it. It's almost like my family.
Absolutely.
And I have such close friends now, literally. It's grown to have all kinds of programs, everything. It's nonprofit. We give free prosthesis to women who don't have reconstruction, or maybe they're going to, but they have to delay it for chemo. We're doing all kinds of stuff.
And what was that website again?
It's www.friendsafterdiagnosis.com. There's our event calendars there. There's all kinds of information. And then we also have a resource library locally for any, women with cancer. But we accept everybody. We've had people come in that had other things and they wanted to come and meet and, be with us. And we have programs that are open to the public and all kinds of stuff.
That gets me on to my next question about, there's a lot of people that want to help, but they don't quite know how to help. I feel like sometimes, you buy a pink t-shirt from whatever organization and you don't know where it's going or what it's for, or if it's just a pink t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the best way for people to help is?
To help an individual or to help?
I think more broadly, maybe.
Well, I will say that if it was locally, the Friends After Diagnosis people do donate, and we do fundraisers and stuff, and that helps the women that have cancer have support.
And what kind of fundraisers do you guys do?
We do mailings twice a year, and we also have other, like a International Women's Day in March. We have a movie at the Majestic. Usually that's where it's been the last couple of years. And then we also have this, we did have this tennis club that was doing fundraisers, but they have some things going on this year, so they can't, do that for us. But we have different companies that have supported us and people, but those are the main fundraisers that we do. And
so do you think it's better to support a local organization like that over
American Cancer Society?
Yes.
And
I'm not saying anything bad against them, but sometimes I don't know where my dollar's going.
Well, I can say this about American Cancer Society, the local, American, and national. For me, they've helped me enormously.
Okay.
I went to them and had free wigs. The money that you donate to them, based on my experience, legitimately goes into it. And I'm on Herceptin, which is the immunological drug that treats the HER2 positive, which you're only supposed to be on for 1 year. It's recommended, we talked about statistics, that you're only on it for 1 year or 6 months. Well, I've gone outside that window, so you can't, you don't know. I'm right. A unique individual, as every single person is. And the Herceptin for me was funded. The research and advancement of it was funded by the American Cancer Society.
Yeah.
So I think...
Well, that's good to know, though, because like I said, a lot of times, I'm very, I try to be cognizant and a good steward of my money. So I don't like just, donating to a cause and not knowing, if it's really going to help.
Yeah,
I
You know?
agree.
and even to that point, like even like for my mom, right, when she was going through her thing, at some point she really couldn't take care of herself very well because the bones and everything, right? So it was really hard for her to walk, etc. Plus, she was always on morphine and stuff like that. But the Cancer Center or the American Cancer Society did help out with funding a lot of her meds. Another thing that people don't take into account are things like Meals on Wheels.
Yes.
That was huge for us because a lot of times we just didn't have enough time to be there, right? So somebody would always be there, but sometimes you'd have to miss a couple of hours, and it might be during the time of lunch or things of that nature. And yeah, locally, there's a ton of help, a lot of resources that were able to help us out.
Yes,
such
and
as
that's true.
Meals on
That's a
Wheels.
good point about the meals, because I was going to say, if you said nationally, my first thought is American Cancer, and locally. And then there was something else I was thinking. The American Cancer Society, then local support, the meals, that is something individually that helped me enormously. I mean, I had people that I had graduated with here that I hadn't seen in 10 years pull up with, a meal for my family and I. And of course, my daughter and some close friends of mine were there every step of the way, helping me. But that was huge because I worked, full time as well as my husband. So to come home, you have to, when you go through chemotherapy, for me, when I went through it, I had to choose, where is my energy going to be spent the most? I still have to do that now when I had to come back. And it's, there is a progression of fatigue and there's side effects and all kinds of stuff. But I had to choose where my energy goes. And if it was to survive and continue to work, then I had to focus on that. When I came home, I would push through and do what I had to do, but it was so nice to have people help me like that. And that's another big thing, is a lot of people have a hard time receiving help, and I was one of those persons. Yeah. I don't need any help. I can do it myself. Right. That came from years of independence and, being hurt and that kind of stuff. But it was like, I had to, I realized that a lot of people want to really genuinely give.
Yeah.
They want to help you. And to take that away from them is not, you're just like taking away them blessing you is unfair to them.
I like to say that. I like that. I don't want to take away anybody's blessing, and I don't want anybody taking away my blessing.
That's right.
If I'm willing to make you a meal, I'd say my wife, you probably wouldn't like it very much if I made it. We could get Larry to make it. But don't take away that from me.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. Because I think we all know how good it feels to really, truly, genuinely help somebody or gift something to somebody. And you know how that feels inside yourself, so don't take that away from somebody else.
Yes.
And I know it's hard because of pride and these other things that come into our lives, but I definitely feel like there's a good lesson in there for sure.
For sure.
Well, no, that was awesome.
Definitely. Well, Jeannie, we definitely think you are an extraordinary person. We're going to ask you one last question. Based on your experiences, what is one of the most important pieces of advice you think you can give our listeners?
On my experiences with the cancer journey.
With anything. It doesn't have to be about cancer.
Well, I keep, I probably be a broken record, but my best advice is to be grateful. That no matter what you go through in life, is if you're grateful, and I do have to say, God, if you have God, and you're grateful, I think you can make it through anything. I think we all have something to be grateful for. We have way more than one thing. We can't lose sight of that. I think we lose sight in a day-to-day. We're under pressure, or things come our way, or or we get angry at somebody. Maybe it's a perfect stranger, but then it's like, is that really important?
Not at all.
When you face your own mortality, it's those things become less and less important.
So trivial.
You listen more. I listen more to people. I try to just my best piece of advice is to be grateful and have faith, and you should be able to get through anything. Truly grateful, and compassion for others.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate it for sure.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Guys, we appreciate you listening. If you guys got any questions, comments, or concerns, you can find us at fullgorillalife@gmail.com. Make sure you check out our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Full Gorilla Life.
And at Twitter, it is at Gorilla Full. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it the other way around, but it's a Gorilla Full. Please feel free to visit our website at fullgorilla.life. And last but not least, please hit the subscribe button of choice on your podcast app of choice. That's what I meant to say. Typically, I get it right. This time I got it wrong. Anyways,
Later.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.